Global Watch Marching in Reverse: How Pakistan Celebrates Defeats as National Holidays. Pakistan has long been characterized by contradictions, and its leadership has once again veered into the realm of performative patriotism. On this occasion, however, they have gone beyond their usual reliance on rhetoric or censorship, choosing instead to officially commemorate what is widely regarded as a strategic failure in the recent military standoff with India, following the latter's Operation Sindoor, which struck militant infrastructure and military targets without reprisal. On May 13, the Shahbaz Sharif administration announced a new national holiday, Yom-e-Marquez Haq Day of the Battle for Truth, to be observed annually on May 10, not to mark a victory, but what officials framed as a moral success over India, despite experiencing significant military losses during the four-day conflict. The circumstances surrounding this newly instituted National Day of Valor are far from obscure. Between 67 and May 10, South Asia experienced an escalation of armed conflict between India and Pakistan. In response to the Pahalgam massacre, in which 26 Indian civilians were killed by Pakistan-backed Lashkar-Toiba militants on April 22, India undertook Operation Sindoor during the night of 67 May, aiming to demonstrate deterrence and punitive intent. The operation targeted no fewer than 9 locations housing militant infrastructure and training camps across the line of control and within Pakistani territory. Independent analysts and satellite imagery have substantiated India's precision strikes on terror-related logistics. In retaliation, Pakistan's military launched its own Operation Bunyan Marsus on May 10, which included drone swarm offensives. However, all were effectively neutralized by India's air defense systems, which intercepted and destroyed dozens of Turkish-made drones in large numbers. In a significant escalation, Indian armed forces targeted at least 9 Pakistan Air Force PAF bases, extending across the country from the Nurkan Air Base near Islamabad Rawalpindi to Rahim Yar Khan, Sukar, Chinian, Pasrar, and Sialkot, among others. With several air bases rendered largely inoperative, Islamabad was compelled to pursue de-escalation through Director General of Military Operations DGMO-level dialogue by the evening of 10 May. However, the DGSPR, the media arm of Pakistan's armed forces, reverted to its well-established narrative strategy by asserting that a befitting reply had been delivered to India's precision strikes, despite clear evidence to the contrary. Such rhetoric has become a defining feature of the military's public relations discourse. Despite professing a commitment to transparency, the Pakistani establishment along with its civilian front that's once again avoided offering genuine openness or accountability. Instead, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif capitulated to the military establishment's every exaggerated demand, aligning himself with its myth-making apparatus. As part of these symbolic gestures, on May 13, PM Sharif proclaimed that May 10 would henceforth be observed annually as Yom-e-Marquez Haq Day of the Battle for Truth, in a show of support for the Pakistani armed forces. Furthermore, the government extended this orchestrated display by designating May 16 as Yom-e-Tashakkur Day of Gratitude, ostensibly to express thanks to divine forces for safeguarding the nation. Even more notably, General Asim Munir, the current army chief, was conferred the rare military rank of Field Marshal, becoming only the second Pakistan Army general to receive this title since General Ayub Khan in 1959. This elevation is symbolic rather than operational, reflecting more the military's intent to project strength than any substantive achievement on the battlefield. However, these recent developments provide insight into the broader pattern whereby the Pakistani state, especially its military establishment, routinely transforms setbacks into celebrations to uphold its legitimacy. In the process, it not only actively reshapes historical narratives in real time but also employs national holidays as instruments of diversion and morale control. The strategy itself dates back several decades. In 1965, Pakistan launched Operation Gibraltar, aiming to provoke an uprising in Jammu and Kashmir by infiltrating regular army troops. The operation, however, ended in failure, triggering the full-scale Indo-Pak War of 1965. Ultimately, Pakistan ceded more territory than it gained and was compelled to agree to a ceasefire through the Tashkent Agreement of 1966. Nevertheless, each year on September 6, the country observes Defense Day, a solemn patriotic occasion featuring military parades and speeches glorifying Pakistan's alleged martial superiority. In 1999, Pakistani forces unlawfully crossed the line of control and seized strategic mountain positions in the Kargil region. The operation, carried out without civilian government approval, led to the deaths of hundreds of Pakistani soldiers as India launched a counter-offensive to retake the area. Nevertheless, General Pervez Musharraf, the architect of the Kargil debacle, appointed army chief by Nawaz Sharif after bypassing two senior officers only months earlier, soon assumed control through a military coup. Even today, Kargil is remembered in segments of Pakistan's national narrative not as a failure, but as a bold display of military ingenuity. What remains consistent across these episodes is the deliberate reconfiguration of national memory. Military defeats are recast as stories of resistance, while tactical blunders are reframed as moral triumphs. This extends beyond mere propaganda. It represents a sustained strategy of narrative management that shields the military from accountability and ensures the civilian government remains subordinate to the armed forces' entrenched authority. By designating May 10 as Yom Marquez Haq, the state is not merely revising the narrative of a military confrontation but is also proactively undermining dissent, stifling debate, and conditioning future generations to prioritize myth over reality. Educational institutions will present it as a moment of national victory, much like the portrayal of Operation Gibraltar. Any critiques highlighting strategic failures or the true economic, diplomatic, and military costs are likely to be marginalized or suppressed. The utility of these contrived holidays is multifaceted. Firstly, they offer a cathartic release for a population grappling with economic hardship, political turmoil, and international isolation. In a nation beset by soaring inflation, a depreciating rupee, and frequent IMF bailouts, mythologized nationalism provides an inexpensive form of escapism that discourages critical inquiry. Secondly, such observances function as tests of loyalty. By requiring public participation in the commemoration of fabricated victories, the state fosters an environment where patriotism becomes performative and dissent is deemed perilous. Thirdly, and arguably most cynically, these holidays reinforce the military's hold over national identity. While in most democracies national holidays commemorate independence, revolution, civil rights, or peace, Pakistan's calendar is increasingly dominated by observances that glorify the military's role as protector and guardian, despite historical evidence to the contrary. These occasions are not simply commemorations but tools of militarist nationalism, deliberately crafted to obscure inconvenient realities. While every nation possesses its own symbols and moments of unity can be vital, when these symbols are founded on falsehoods and unity rests upon denial, the outcome is not strength but stagnation. Consequently, the Pakistani establishment is offering its population triumphalism and a continuous stream of delusion rather than the truthful account to which they are entitled. Swipe left for next video. Moving forward, although Yom Marquez Haq will likely be observed with parades, speeches, and patriotic songs, behind the flags and slogans lies the reality of a state regressing where defeats are recast as triumphs, and history is rewritten not by scholars but by military leaders. Unless Pakistanis demand accountability from the establishment, their nation will remain ensnared in a cycle of self-deception, mistaking every backward step for progress. The writer is an author and a columnist. His X handle is Arunanandliv. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the author. They do not necessarily reflect News 18's views. Latest blogs